Fly this jet and I'll marry you. Millionaire mocked black cleaner. Secret left him shocked polished. Marble floors glistened under harsh fluorescent lights as a lone figure moved between the gleaming wheels of a jet. Naomi Carter pushed her mop in steady strokes, her navy work shirt marked with the logo of Kingsley Aviation. A few yards away, crystal glasses clinked in the hands of men who owned more planes than most people owned cars. Bradley Kingsley, the billionaire whose name crowned the hangar, lounged against his Gulfstream stair rail. His oldest friend, Charles Whitford, laughed at yet another boast about profits, while a camera crew prepared to capture their latest business milestone. Bradley's eyes flicked to the janitor. A slow smile curved at the edge of his mouth, the kind that meant trouble for anyone on the receiving end. "You look awfully comfortable around my plane," he called out, voice echoing off the steel walls. "Think you could handle something bigger than that mop?" Laughter rippled through his entourage. He stepped closer, holding up his champagne like a trophy. "Tell you what, Ms. Carter. If you can fly my $20 million jet out of this hangar and bring it back in one piece, I'll make you Mrs. Kingsley. Fail, and you hand over your badge before the sun sets." The hangar went silent, cameras catching every word. Naomi tightened her grip on the mop. Would she walk away or walk straight into the cockpit? Rain slid down the cracked window of a modest two-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city. Inside, the air smelled faintly of jet fuel and lemon cleaner, a reminder of the two worlds Naomi Carter straddled every day. On the kitchen table lay a flight logbook with worn leather edges, its pages filled with coordinates and signatures from missions flown over war zones. Next to it sat a stack of medical bills stamped "Past Due" in red. The contrast told the story she never voiced aloud. Photographs lined the refrigerator door. In one, Naomi stood in a crisp Air Force uniform, silver wings catching the sun. In another, she knelt beside a grinning little girl with dark curls and a hospital bracelet. That child, Maya Carter, was the reason Naomi had traded cockpits for mops. The autoimmune disease eating at Maya's immune system required treatments no military insurance would fully cover. When her wife had died in combat 3 years earlier, the burden had become Naomi's alone. She had resigned her commission, sold the house near the base, and taken any work she could find that offered steady pay and medical coverage. Evenings in their apartment became a ritual of resilience. Maya did homework at the kitchen counter while Naomi pressed her old flight patches flat in a book to keep them from fraying. "Mama, tell me about the sky again," Maya would whisper when fatigue dulled her voice. Naomi would describe barrel rolls above desert heat, refueling maneuvers in midnight storms, and the sound of freedom roaring through a jet engine. She kept her voice light, but her fingers clenched around the mug of chamomile tea until her knuckles whitened. Every story was both a lullaby and a promise that one day she would give Maya a life where hospitals were only memories. The hangar at Kingsley Aviation was her opposite stage. Polished concrete, blinding light, men in suits moving like they owned the sky. Naomi slipped between them with her mop and cleaning cart, eyes down but ears open. Years of cockpit discipline had trained her to observe quietly. Fuel ratios whispered between mechanics, weather codes scribbled on clipboards, the smallest vibration of a turbine under stress. She absorbed it all but never let on. One man in the hangar saw more than the uniform of a janitor. Ethan Price, senior mechanic with oil-stained hands and a Navy tattoo fading on his forearm, always nodded when she passed. He left an extra cup of black coffee on the workbench at dawn, no words attached. Once, when a rookie engineer mishandled a diagnostic panel, Naomi had stepped in instinctively and shut down the system before it overloaded. Ethan had caught the motion, his brow lifting as if to say, "I know what you just did." He never exposed her, but from that day he watched her work with quiet respect. Another set of eyes began to notice too. Sophie Daniels, the youngest engineer on Bradley Kingsley's payroll, spent her lunch breaks sketching wing designs in the corner of the hangar. She often found herself glancing toward the woman pushing a mop near the jets. The way Naomi paused to study a fuselage, the precise angle she held a cleaning cloth when wiping sensors. It looked more like an inspection than janitorial work. Sophie tucked the observation away, unsure what to do with it but sensing an untold story behind the blue work shirt. At home, Naomi kept a small cedar box under her bed. Inside lay her Air Force medals, Distinguished Flying Cross, Air Medal with Oak Leaf Cluster, and a commendation for a rescue mission few civilians would ever know about. Each piece of metal was cool against her skin, a reminder of who she had been and the silence she now lived in. She would trace the edge of her wings pin and glance toward Maya, asleep under a blanket of cartoon planets. "Someday," she whispered to the dark, "we will rise again." Back at the hangar, Bradley Kingsley's parties grew louder. New clients, new deals, new jets. Naomi cleaned up spilled champagne without comment, but her mind mapped the cockpit of the aircraft as easily as she once mapped hostile airspace. Every rivet, every dial, every emergency protocol still lived in her muscle memory. She never expected to use that knowledge again, but she could not unlearn it. Then came the afternoon when Bradley's taunt cut through the roar of an engine test. "If you can fly my $20 million jet, I'll make you Mrs. Kingsley. Fail, and hand in your badge." The laughter of his entourage had been sharp enough to draw blood. Naomi's mop paused mid-stroke, water dripping onto the floor. Inside her, the disciplined pilot and the desperate mother collided. She thought of Maya's next treatment, of the stack of unpaid bills, of the wings she had hidden for so long. The crowd expected her to shrink back into anonymity. What they could not see was that a decision had already begun to form, a decision that would crack open every assumption in that hangar. A hush settled over the hangar like a sudden drop in cabin pressure. The last echo of Bradley Kingsley's taunt still floated above the polished floor, mingling with the faint smell of jet fuel. Naomi Carter set her mop upright against the wall, its handle clicking softly as it stood on its own. Without a word, she wiped her palms on her work shirt and began walking toward the gleaming Gulf Stream parked at the center of the hangar. Every step she took seemed to erase the boundaries of her blue uniform. Shoulders squared, chin level, her quiet composure looked less like submission and more like someone returning to familiar ground. The men who had been laughing seconds before now watched her with tilted heads, unsure whether to expect a meltdown or a joke. Bradley swirled the champagne in his glass. "This is going to be priceless," he muttered to Charles Whitford, whose grin widened. Charles flicked a cigar ash onto the floor. "She will not even know how to open the door." Their amusement fed off each other like old pilots trading war stories they never actually flew. Naomi reached the jet's nose and pressed her hand lightly against the metal skin. She closed her eyes for half a breath, just enough to feel the aircraft's weight, its center of gravity, the hum of power waiting in its engines. When she opened them again, the room's laughter had faded into background noise. Without glancing at anyone, she crouched to inspect the landing gear, running her fingers along hydraulic lines and tire treads with the practiced ease of someone who had done it thousands of times before. Near the maintenance bay, Ethan Price stopped winding a hose. The Navy anchor on his forearm seemed to tighten as his muscles stilled. He watched Naomi run her thumb along a rivet pattern only a trained eye would notice. She was not poking around like a curious janitor. She was performing a textbook pre-flight inspection. His gaze sharpened, memories of his own days around carrier decks flickering. "Who are you, Carter?" he thought. "Look at her pretending," Bradley said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Checking my jet like she owns it. Maybe she thinks mopping counts as maintenance." He fished his phone from his pocket and began typing, smirking as he posted a funny caption for his social feed. Naomi did not respond. She moved to the fuselage, eyes flicking to sensor ports, emergency exits and fuel caps, every action deliberate. Her calm created an odd tension in the hangar, a pull between disbelief and dawning curiosity. Sophie Daniels, standing at the edge of the group with her tablet pressed to her chest, felt her stomach twist. The janitor's hands moved like an engineer's, even like a pilot's. She slid her phone from her pocket and hit record, framing Naomi against the sleek curve of the jet. If Maya Carter could not be here to see this, Sophie would make sure she got every second. Inside the cockpit, Naomi's reflection appeared in the dark glass of the windshield. She mounted the stairs without hesitation, each footfall echoing like a drumbeat. The door sealed behind her with a hiss. Through the glass, she could see the men still gathered below, Bradley laughing at some crude remark, Charles holding out a fistful of cash to start a bet. Their voices were muffled now, as though she had already left their world. She slid into the captain's seat and rested her palms on the yoke. The familiar texture under her fingers sent a current of memory through her. The night refueling over the Persian Gulf, the scramble alerts, the coded commands. Her breathing steadied. In the right pocket of her work pants lay a folded photo of Maya smiling under a blanket of cartoon planets. Naomi tapped it once for luck before powering up the systems. Outside, Ethan moved closer, wiping his hands on a rag. "Boss," he murmured to Bradley, "you sure you want to let her—" Bradley waved him off. "Relax, she will not even start the engines. This is free entertainment." Charles pulled out his phone to live stream. "If she actually rolls this thing an inch, I will buy her dinner." "No, forget that. Bradley, you marry her if she gets it airborne." The whine of auxiliary power spooling up cut through their laughter. Heads turned as cockpit lights blinked to life. Sophie's phone trembled in her hand as she captured the glow reflecting off Naomi's calm face. She texted a quick message to Maya using Naomi's old number. "Your mom is about to do something incredible. Watch for a video." She hit send, unsure if Maya's phone would buzz on a hospital nightstand or in her lap, but knowing the girl deserved to see her mother this way. Naomi's voice stayed steady as she spoke into the headset she had pulled from its hook. "Systems check," she murmured to herself, flipping switches in a sequence only muscle memory could remember. She did not yet announce anything to the room below. This was her moment to center, to reconnect with the sky she had left behind. The engines were still silent, but the cabin smelled like potential, like kerosene and courage. Back on the hangar floor, Bradley's smirk faltered just enough for Ethan to notice. "She looks like she knows what she is doing," Ethan said under his breath. Bradley rolled his eyes but shifted his stance, the first flicker of doubt creeping in. "Anyone can sit in a cockpit," he said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. Up in the cockpit, Naomi placed her hands firmly on the throttles. The jet beneath her was no military fighter, but its systems responded like old friends. She could feel every ounce of thrust waiting to be unleashed. One more breath, one more silent promise to Maya, and she would show them all exactly who they had underestimated. The cockpit lights glowed like a constellation around Naomi Carter. Her fingers moved with a quiet rhythm across switches and dials. Fuel levels, hydraulics, navigation, emergency systems. Each check flowed into the next. She slipped the headset over her ears, the padded cups muffling the noise from the hangar below. Outside the glass, Bradley Kingsley still leaned against a toolbox, laughing with Charles Whitford, but his laughter now sounded forced, like a man telling a joke he no longer found funny. Naomi reached for the radio. Her voice, calm and steady, filled the cockpit. "Control, this is Gulfstream 712 requesting clearance for systems check." Static hissed for a moment, then a crisp reply came through the headset. "Copy that. Clearance granted. Good to have you back, Captain Carter." The words cracked through the hangar like a thunderclap. Bradley's glass tilted, spilling champagne on his shoes. "Captain who?" he barked. Charles's cigar slipped from his fingers and rolled across the floor. Every mechanic, intern, and engineer within earshot froze. "Captain Carter." The title hung in the air like a banner no one had noticed before. Ethan Price stepped closer to Sophie Daniels, lowering his voice. "I knew it," he said. His jaw flexed as old memories lined up in his mind. "I served on a carrier out of Norfolk. We had a Major Carter, fighter pilot, top of her class. She saved 2 crews during a refueling fire." He looked at Sophie. "If this is the same woman, she is not just a pilot. She is a legend." Sophie's heart thumped. She opened her phone and typed a quick message. "Your mom is about to do something incredible." She hit send, picturing Maya Carter in her hospital room, eyes glued to the screen, hope flickering across her face. Up in the cockpit, Naomi smiled faintly at the sound of Captain Carter. It had been years since anyone called her that. Her fingers found the flap lever, easing it down to the first notch. Lights flickered, gauges shifted, and the aircraft seemed to exhale, stretching like a great bird waking from sleep. She keyed the mic again. "Control, beginning engine start sequence." Outside, the whine of turbines spooling up rolled through the hangar. People stepped back as hot air shimmered behind the jet. Bradley's smirk flickered and then returned, brittle now. "She is just running the lights," he said, too loud. "She cannot take it anywhere." But his eyes never left the aircraft. Naomi's hands moved with precision, ignition, fuel flow, starter. The first engine coughed, caught, and then roared to life. The floor trembled under the growing thrust. The second engine followed, a deeper growl filling the space. The noise pressed against the walls until even Charles stopped trying to speak over it. Ethan kept watching her through the windshield. "Look at the way she holds the yoke," he whispered. "That is a pilot who knows her craft." Sophie raised her phone, recording every second. Her fingers shook, but she held steady, framing Naomi in the center of the cockpit like a scene from a film. Bradley stepped back, eyes narrowing. "She's not going to take off." "She does not have permission," he muttered, but there was a quiver of doubt in his voice. He had built his life on control, on making others smaller. Now control was slipping through his hands, and a woman he had mocked was sitting in the captain's seat of his jet. Naomi eased the brakes, released the parking lock, and the aircraft rolled forward with a low rumble. The nose swung toward the open hangar doors where sunlight spilled across the tarmac. She keyed the radio again. "Control, taxiing to runway 27 for systems test." "Roger that, Captain Carter," came the reply. "Runway 27 is clear. Proceed when ready." The hangar went silent except for the twin roars of the engines. Naomi guided the jet with steady hands, her eyes scanning instruments and horizon as if no time had passed since her last flight. She felt the vibrations through her feet, the power under her palms, and the weight of Maya's photograph in her pocket. Outside, Ethan's voice rose just enough for Sophie to hear. "She's lining up for takeoff." Sophie swallowed hard. "She is going to show them everything," she said. Her phone buzzed, a reply from Maya. "What is happening?" "Please tell me everything." Sophie texted back with trembling thumbs. "She is flying, Maya. She is flying." Naomi positioned the jet at the end of the runway. The engines settled into a low growl, like a predator crouching before the leap. She checked flaps, checked trim, checked heading. One more glance at the gauges. One more breath. Behind her, the hangar crowd pressed against the doorframe, faces lit by the glare of sunlight on polished aluminum. Bradley's laughter was gone now, replaced by something he would never call fear. Charles whispered, "She is really going to do it," but no one answered. Naomi placed her left hand on the throttles and her right on the yoke. The runway stretched out ahead of her, shimmering in the heat. She thought of Maya watching from a hospital bed, Sophie's phone held up to the screen, Ethan's quiet faith, and every hour she had spent mopping floors to pay for medicine instead of flying. The engine's pitch climbed higher, a rising chord that filled the cabin and the sky beyond. She whispered to herself, "For you, Maya," and eased the throttles forward. The jet trembled, power surging, wheels pressing against the pavement. The runway blurred under the wheels. Power surged through the frame until every bolt seemed to sing. Naomi Carter kept her eyes fixed on the center line, hands steady. At 140 knots, she eased back on the yoke. The nose lifted, weight fell away, and the jet rose into the sky like it had been waiting for her all along. Gasps erupted in the hangar. People craned their necks, shielding their eyes from the sunlight. Bradley Kingsley had gone completely still, champagne glass frozen in his hand. The Gulfstream climbed cleanly, gear retracting with a solid click, wings gleaming white against the blue. Up front, Naomi's training returned like muscle memory. She trimmed for climb, checked heading, and pushed the throttles forward. "Control, Gulfstream 712 airborne," she said calmly. "Copy, Captain Carter," the tower replied. "Beautiful rotation. Maintain 5,000 and cleared for maneuvers at your discretion." Below, Sophie Daniels held up her phone to capture the moment. She had started a live stream seconds before takeoff. Comments poured down the screen so fast, she could not read them all. "Who is she? This is the janitor? She flies better than airline pilots." Hearts and fire emojis flooded the feed. She flipped the camera to show Bradley's pale face and whispered for her followers, "This is the man who mocked her." Naomi leveled off, feeling the jet respond to her touch like an old friend. "Let us show them, Maya," she murmured. She rolled gently into a 45-degree bank, the horizon tilting, the wings carving a smooth arc. On the ground, some people clapped without realizing it. Bradley's jaw tightened. Ethan Price crossed his arms, nodding at the sky. "That is no amateur joyride," he said. "Watch her energy management." He spoke louder now, making sure the crowd heard. "She is flying a high-performance profile, textbook Air Force." Naomi keyed the mic again. "Control, requesting block altitude for demonstration sequence." "Captain Carter cleared as requested," came the answer. "Your flight is being monitored." "It is an honor." She smiled and pushed the throttles. The Gulf Stream climbed steeply, nose pointed at the sun. Passengers on nearby commercial flights caught glimpses of the jet streaking upward and began filming. Hashtags started trending within minutes. Captain Carter and Flygirl Naomi. At 3,000 meters, she rolled inverted and brought the nose down into a graceful half-Cuban, then leveled out with a clean snap. The big jet handled like a dancer under her hands. Years of combat training, air shows and emergency drills flowed through her muscles. Every maneuver told the watching world exactly who she was. Back on the ground, Sophie's stream hit 100,000 viewers. Comments scrolled in furious lines. This CEO humiliated a war hero. Fire him, give her the company. News outlets clipped the footage and pushed it to their own feeds. Screens lit up in offices, homes, and hospital rooms, including one where Maya Carter sat upright, eyes wide, whispering, "Go, Mom, go." Naomi lined up for a high-speed pass along the runway. The roar of the engines shook windows. Her voice stayed calm in the headset. "Control, performing low pass for crowd." "Cleared, Captain Carter," the tower said, tone thick with admiration. "You are textbook perfect." The jet streaked past the hangar at 200 knots, silver fuselage flashing in the sun. Hats flew off, papers scattered, and a cheer rose unbidden from the mechanics. Bradley's friends began filming him instead of the sky. He lowered his glass and turned away from their lenses, color draining from his face. Naomi eased back on the throttles, brought the jet into a climbing turn, then rolled level and requested vectors back to the field. Each movement was deliberate, unhurried, and flawless. She had nothing to prove except to herself and to her daughter, yet the whole world was watching. Sophie's phone buzzed with new notifications. Network News wants to interview her.
Pilot union sending support.
Air Force alumni claiming her as one of their own. Sophie showed Ethan the screen. "It has gone viral," she said. He grinned. "Good. Let everyone see what merit looks like." Bradley tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. Charles Whitford edged away from him, already texting someone on the board. In the reflection of the hangar windows, Bradley saw his own face, pale, drawn, and very small beneath the jet's shadow. Above, Naomi banked gently into the downwind leg. She touched the photo of Maya in her pocket. "This is for you," she whispered again. And for everyone who was not believed. On the ground the crowd waited, phones raised, breath held. They had mocked a janitor. Now they were witnessing a master.
The wheels kissed the runway with a soft chirp, the kind of landing flight instructors call butter.
Naomi Carter held the center line as the Gulf Stream slowed. Reverse thrust roared briefly, then faded. She guided the jet back toward the hangar with the same calm precision she had shown in the sky. Outside, the crowd had swelled. Mechanics, interns, and visitors pressed against the fence, phones raised. She brought the plane to a stop exactly where it had started. Engines spooled down, fans ticking as they cooled. Naomi set the parking brake, powered down the avionics, and unfastened her harness. For a moment she sat still, breathing in the scent of jet fuel and warm electronics, feeling years of lost flight hours drop from her shoulders. Then she stood, straightened her work shirt, and walked down the stair rail with quiet dignity. The hangar erupted in cheers and camera flashes. Ethan Price stepped forward, eyes bright. "Captain Carter," he said softly, offering his hand. She took it, giving a small nod. Sophie Daniels held up her phone. Already her live stream had crossed 2 million views. Hashtags blazed across social media. News outlets ran headlines like "Janitor turns out to be war hero pilot" and "Kingsley humiliates himself in viral bet." Inside an office above the hangar, board members of Kingsley Aviation watched the numbers in real time. Stock tickers scrolled red. Customers canceled contracts. By nightfall, a statement appeared online announcing that Bradley Kingsley had been removed as CEO effective immediately. His once mighty company had fallen in a single afternoon. While Bradley hid from cameras, another message arrived on Naomi's phone. It was from Summit Air Industries, Kingsley's biggest rival. "We watched your flight. We would like to offer you a senior executive position overseeing pilot training and safety innovation. Full benefits for you and your family. Name your start date." Naomi stared at the screen. After years of silence, a door had opened wide. She thought of Maya's hospital bills stacked on the kitchen table, of their cramped apartment with peeling paint, of nights when she had prayed for just one break. This was not only a break, It was a lifeline. That evening she walked into Maya's room at the children's ward. Maya had been watching the footage on repeat, her small hands gripping the tablet. "Mom, you were amazing," she whispered. Naomi pulled her daughter close. "We are going to be all right now," she said. "We have a new job, a new homecoming, and your treatment will never be in danger again." 2 weeks later, a quiet interview aired on a major network. Naomi sat across from the anchor, wearing a simple navy blazer. Medals glinted on a small table beside her. She did not boast. She spoke about dignity, about second chances, about how people in uniforms, whether janitorial or military, carry unseen histories. "Never assume someone's worth by the job they are forced to take," she said. "Respect should be the default, not the reward." Clips of the interview spread almost as fast as the flight video. Parents showed it to children. Pilots posted it in break rooms. Maya watched it at home in their new living room, curled on the couch with a blanket. She saw her mother not just as a survivor but as a leader. Naomi had landed more than a plane. She had landed a future, for herself, for her daughter, and for anyone who had been underestimated. A year passed, and the world around Naomi Carter had changed in ways she once thought impossible. The small janitor's closet where she kept her mop was a distant memory. Today she walked through the polished halls of Summit Air Industries headquarters as Vice President of Training and Safety, the first black woman to ever hold such a role in the company. On this bright morning, the auditorium at the National Aviation Academy buzzed with excitement. Rows of cadets in crisp uniforms filled the seats, waiting to hear from a woman whose name had become a symbol of dignity and resilience. At the edge of the stage, a teenage girl stepped forward, her smile lighting up the room. "This is my mom," Maya Carter said proudly, her voice strong. She was once told she was just a janitor, but she showed the world who she really was. "Please welcome Vice President Naomi Carter." The audience rose in applause as Naomi walked to the podium. She paused, letting the sound wash over her. She was not the quiet figure mopping floors anymore. Her shoulders were straight, her presence steady. She looked at the cadets, at the young men and women who would soon take to the skies. Her voice carried with calm strength. "I flew missions in war zones. I scrubbed hangar floors. Both roles taught me the same truth. Never underestimate someone because of the uniform they wear or the title they hold. Potential is often hidden in plain sight. Dignity is not tied to a job, but to the way you live your life." Silence followed for a heartbeat. Then the hall erupted in applause. Some cadets wiped their eyes. Others sat taller in their seats, inspired. Maya clapped the loudest, her smile shining with pride. As the camera panned across the audience, the screen faded to black with the words, "True greatness is never loud." It reveals itself when you least expect it. Respect everyone. You may be standing before a hero,